Hello. Today in my storytelling playlist, I'm going to talk about mishaps and the stars. So what this video is going to be about is problems I've had in this international move that I've done, but how they kind of align with astrology, because I think there's definitely a correlation with everything that's been going on. So this might be a little bit of a longer video, I'm not exactly sure, but I have a lot to cover, and if you get bored, obviously click away, but if not, maybe you might gain some insight by the end, we'll see. So I moved to Mexico in late November, very end of November. If you know what Mercury in retrograde is, Mercury in retrograde started November 25th and I flew out November 26th. So I basically started like right in it. So what Mercury in retrograde is a time where it appears that Mercury is moving backwards. Mercury, as far as a symbol, is the messenger god. You know, he's fast and fleet of foot. Well, when he moves backwards, everything that has to do with sort of movement and communication all gets put into a standstill or almost dismantled. It also has a shadow period, which is 2 weeks before that date and 2 weeks after. And this happens about 3 times a year. But in my case, the shadow date after my landing in Mexico was 2 weeks after the 26th when I landed. So it went well into December. And I had many mishaps. And I'm continuing to have many mishaps, and I'll talk about that in a second. It went until December 15th. And then 2 weeks after would have made it right to the new year. And now we are coming into the wolf moon, which is January 13th. And in that case, the moon eats Mars. That's why one of the reasons why they call it the wolf moon. They also say because the wolves howl more at that time or something. But for me, for an Aries, I'm an Aries, for me, it's time of reflection, it's time of heightened emotions and challenges, which obviously I've been dealing with. So the first thing I'm going to say, if you watch my channel, you know that I have kind of a Gnostic point of view, mostly. There's this idea of Lush, or the archons feeding off of our emotional energy. And over the last month and a half, I've had, I wouldn't say emotional meltdowns, but definitely moments where I just couldn't believe what was going on. There was complete disbelief on my part because there were so many things. You know, people have bad days, we all have bad days, and we even have meltdowns on those bad days. I will actually say that I can only think of one other time in my life where it was so challenging in terms of this thing, that thing, that thing, that thing, that thing, on and on and on. And I'm in one of those times right now. I've been trying to keep my emotions balanced in a sort of stoic manner. It hasn't been easy, I have to admit. So let me get into the mishaps now. So it all kind of started when I decided to come here. A lot of my work is online. YouTube is online. My book sales, that's all done online. I also teach English online. So I have many online obligations. And I have a laptop and a PC computer. And one of the reasons I have the PC computer is because I like to use older versions of some programs, and especially like visual programs. So I had it for that reason. Well, when I moved here, I was like, okay, well, I'll bring both computers. That way I have my laptop to work on, but I also have this PC as a backup in case something goes wrong with my laptop. So I looked into how to deal with this PC. It's not a really big PC. It's actually quite small. And, you know, some people were saying to take out the chip, and other people were saying completely disassemble it. And then, yeah, other people were saying that if you box it up well and pack it well, that it shouldn't really be a problem. So I had a lot of different points of view on that. And I talked to a friend that knows a lot about tech, and he said, you know, how much do you know about what it'll be like to get it put back together in Mexico? And I knew nothing. So I was a little apprehensive of how difficult that might be, especially with the language barrier, but also I wasn't sure. Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of variables in that, and I didn't really want to take it apart. So I opted to pack it well. So I had the original box, and I had the foam and everything, and I packed it in the original box, and I, you know, stuffed clothes around any of the gaps. It was very well packed. And then I had this kind of suitcase. It wasn't really a suit. I mean, it's a travel bag basically. And I put the box in the bag, and then I packed things around that as well. So it was definitely packed well. Well, the first moment I realized something was amiss was when I was taking the flight. I got the flight for quite cheap, actually, for an international flight all the way across the world. It was about 500 USD. It was very cheap. But, you know, I had a long layover in Texas and, you know, a lot of other factors for that price. But when I got to Texas, it said that I had to pick up the luggage and recheck it. And so I went to the baggage claim, and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, and it never comes out. And so I finally have to ask somebody, and they say, you know, where am I flying to? And I tell them, they're like, no, it's going to your destination. And I was a little annoyed because the other person told me that I'd have to recheck it. So I was like, okay. And I don't know, when I was waiting in line to see the bags coming down, I saw all these bags just like rolling around. And I was like, oh God, if you know, maybe the computer's not going to make it, seeing how the bags were treated. I mean, I've flown before, and I've seen people handle the bags, but when you check the bags, they usually just kind of set them on the conveyor and it, you know, goes off. But yeah, I mean, watching them just tumble down, I was like, oh, I don't think this thing's going to make it. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. It didn't cost me that much money. It was more just for the peace of mind of having the backup. Well, I get here, and a couple days later, I'm supposed to be paid from my job in Korea, my teaching job. And they have a problem trying to pay me internationally. So that gets delayed a week. And I spent a lot of money to get here. You know, just moving is a huge cost. Moving internationally is a really large cost. So I really needed that money at the time because I needed it for my first and last month's rent for an apartment and stuff. And so I had to wait. So I was in a hotel longer than I intended. And then once I got the money finally, I had trouble finding an apartment. It took me a long time. The city that I live in is quite, I don't want to say infested, but there are a lot of Americans here, and a lot of them are retirees. So the prices for apartments and houses and stuff is quite high for Mexico. So it took me a while to find something in my price range that I wanted to pay. It took me quite a while, several weeks. And so all this time I'm in hotels and hostels trying to save money until I could find the apartment. And once I find the apartment, I have to pay the woman, that was the moment when I realized that Mercury in retrograde was full on. I went to the bank, and there was a sign on the bank on the door, and I'm supposed to move in tomorrow, like the next day. And I'm like, oh God, what's this? So I translate the sign, and it says that there is this kind of, not exactly a holiday, but like all the banks are going to be closed today. I'm like, oh, great. I go to another bank just to make sure. Again, it's closed. So I find this ATM. A lot of the ATMs here don't let you do deposits. So it took me a while to find an ATM where I could do a deposit. And then when I tried to do the deposit, there were all these different problems. Routing numbers and all this stuff. And I'm talking on WhatsApp to this person trying to sort these problems out. And it basically went on for about an hour and a half of me trying to get all the information I needed to transfer this money. And of course, all of this is in Spanish, and my Spanish isn't that good. And I had to translate a lot of stuff on the ATM, and it wasn't even that. I mean, the woman that I was dealing with, she was very nice, but she didn't really know. And so she had to keep calling me back and like asking her son, and like, you know, there were just all these communication problems. And then finally we just give up because we can't do it. And she's like, just try it tomorrow when the bank's open again. I'm like, okay. So she lets me move in without paying, which was very nice and kind of her. And I move in, and I go to the bank, and that goes relatively smoothly for as far as banks here. I don't know if you've been to Mexico, but the banks here take a long time. I thought Korea was a long time, but here, I mean, it took about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours to deposit this money. I was waiting that long in line. I finally get in the apartment, and then January 1st comes about, and I feel like, oh, great, Mercury in retrograde is gone. I can finally move on, you know? And so my outlook is bright, but then the real, excuse my language, shit show starts. My laundry is stolen. I talk about that in another video. So that's like the first thing that kind of sets this off, this other phase of it. And I suppose I could blame that on Mexico. I don't. I just blame it on the one woman in the situation. And, you know, strangely, you would think that a lot of these problems have to do with Mexico in my, you know, just coming here. And they actually don't. They have to do with technology and things I either overlooked or I didn't think about. You know, it's a lot you have to deal with when you move to begin with, but then if you do an international move, there's even more things. So the first problem is that with all these other things happening, I didn't think to change my phone number in some of my accounts online, my new Mexican phone number from my Korean phone number. Now, here's the thing, I'm American, so a lot of my accounts are in the US. So even when I was in Korea, I would have all kinds of problems trying to deal with my American accounts because of the phone number. Either the cells in the online system would not accept the number because it was a different amount of digits. You know, there were just all these problems. Well, I forgot to change my phone number. I hadn't got to it yet. And Amazon locks me out because they want an OTP code and they send it to my old phone number. And so I'm like, well, I don't have that phone number anymore. And because of my book business, a lot of my income comes through Amazon. So I'm like, okay, that's a problem. Well, it's quite important, actually. Not just for the income, but you know, I'm regularly needing to maintain things, and it's all connected to Amazon and other booksellers. Thankfully, I'm not locked out of those yet. But Amazon locks me out. I go on their chat to try to get back in, and first person can't help me, on and on, 4 people can't help me. And I'm like, to me it seemed like a simple fix. I verify my identity, which I did. I tell them I have a new phone number. They should send the OTP to the new phone number. That should be it, right? Well, they can't fix it. So they direct me to the phone line. So I talked to a person on the phone line. It's about a 20-minute call. He can't fix it. I'm like, okay. He's like, I'm going to send it up another grade and you'll get an email in 24 hours. Well, I never get the email in 24 hours. So a few days later, I call again. It's another 20-minute call. And pretty much a mirror of the same phone call. Goes through the same steps, tries to change it. He's like, I'm going to escalate it, sends it to the thing. So now I'm still waiting for the email. This was 2 days ago. So I'm not sure what to do about that. But on the same day that that happens, that I do the call, the battery in my laptop dies. No joke. And the timing on it could not be any worse. Not just because I need the laptop to do it all, but the PC never survived the trip. I tried to plug it in here, it doesn't turn on. I didn't think too big of a deal about it at the time because I was like, well, I can just take it to a service. It's probably just the power thing, and maybe it will cost me a little bit to get it fixed. But now it's a problem because I don't have it as a backup and the laptop dies. Most of my stuff is on my laptop. I have backups of all my novels and all, a lot of my images, but anything that I've been working on in the last maybe 2 weeks is on the laptop, and I don't have a backup of it. So certain things I can't get access to, and it's caused issues. But the hardest thing is that now even on my phone, I don't know if I should try to access my other stuff. Because are they going to lock me out of those accounts as well? Because I can't change this phone number and all, Google controls all of it. So who knows what's going to happen. So I'm very shy about trying to log into any of my stuff until I get this Amazon thing sorted out. But yeah, the tech has been a problem. I did a video yesterday for my writing process playlist, and it was like a 6-minute video, and it took me more than 4 hours to edit this video. Normally it'll take under an hour for something like that, maybe 45 minutes. So yeah, it's a problem. I'm working on getting the computer fixed. We'll see how long that takes. But the point of this video is to basically say that, so many things can happen. You can have problems on top of problems on top of problems. And I do think a lot of it is tied to astrology. But I guess my advice is just ride the tides. Sort out the problems. Take one thing at a time. Try to maintain a stoic point of view. And don't let the emotions that pop up in terms of frustration and you can only control what you can control. I can't control the Amazon people. I can't control the technology. I just have to focus on what I can control. So I'm going to take things one day at a time, and we'll see where that goes. But that's about all I got for this one. It's more of a venting session than any kind of story, I guess. But anyway, have a good day, and I hope your new year is starting off better than mine. Take care. Bye-bye.